Welcome to Death Holler. Do you like scary movies? Welcome to Season 3, Slash or Pass. There will be laughter, tears, tender moments.
Jason. My special boy.
But most of all, screams. Remember, when you're in Death Holler, listener discretion is always advised. We hope you have a killer time.
Welcome back to Death Holler. I am your host and the time-traveling killer, the Reverend Dr. Death, and joining me as always is my co-host and ultimate final girl, La Llareyna. Do you think you'll survive the sequel, Llareyna?
No, because I was dead before we even had the prequel, so I'm not, unless there's some way to bring me back. I'm sure there is. We've seen it in our previous episode that we recorded. I get stabbed by some magical sword, you know? Maybe.
Yeah, that usually works pretty well. All right, we have finally made it. The end of Slasher Pass season. We've covered all the major slasher franchises, watched some of the lowest grade films in the genre, and survived to tell the tale. Did we cover all the movies in the genre? Hell no. But like any good slasher, there's always room for a sequel. So at some point in the future, we will get to the Hatchet films, the Urban Legend movies, Saw, The Collector, possibly cover Scream Queens, maybe even review the Hack Slash comics. Who knows? But this episode, we are finishing things out with two modern slashers, both horror comedies, which we both enjoy. Mm-hmm. And both dealing with the loss of a mother. Ugh. So there's kind of a theme going on.
It was rough.
So take a seat in your photo booth time machine, grab your favorite Camp Bloodbath merch, and join us as we review Totally Killer and The Final Girls. First up, though, if you're enjoying the podcast, we'd appreciate it if you would take the time to like, comment, subscribe on whatever podcast platform you prefer. It helps us get more visibility on podcast listings and helps us grow. Also, consider following us on social media. You can find us on TikTok and Twitter under Death Holler Pod, and we can be found on Instagram and Facebook under Death Holler Podcast. We appreciate everyone who listens and hope you enjoy the show. First movie, Totally Killer from 2023. Tagline, Murder is so 1987.
Which I love. I don't know how you feel about it, but no one from this age would get it.
No, I mean, they really wouldn't. Directed by Nahnatchka Khan.
Wow, okay.
That's the best I can do with that name.
Yeah.
Written by David Madelon, Sasha Pearl Raver, and Jen D'Angelo, who did the screenplay, and then David Madelon and Sasha Pearl Raver did the story. Music by Michael Andrews, made for a budget of $34 million, and I don't have a box office because it wasn't released in the movies. It was put on Amazon.
Amazon. God, there's got to be a way to calculate something because, I don't know. There's no way no one's mathing that.
They do that probably by streaming numbers, but that stuff is so hidden right now that there's no chance of knowing what that is. Principal players, we have Kiernan Shipka playing Jamie Hughes / Colette. We'll get into the reason why she has a name change later on. She is the time-traveling final girl. Of course, she was in The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina and The Black Coat's Daughter that we have previously covered on this podcast. Also was a voice on The Legend of Korra and was on Mad Men.
Oh yeah, I forgot she was a young one on Mad Men.
Yeah, she's. I really hope she does more horror stuff. I like her in about every horror related thing I've seen her in. So
yeah.
Nathaniel Appiah plays Doug Summers, at least the teen version, who is the Sweet 16 killer, at least the original one. Because spoiler alert, Jonathan Potts, who plays Chris Dubasage, is the adult version, or the adult version is the Sweet 16 killer from 2023, and he's the one that goes back in the altered timeline and kills a few more people. So.
I just thought of something that I feel like I should bring up at the end. We're going to have to put a pin in it, but there's an original killer who we find out who that, we know what happens to them. Never mind. We know what happens to them when they get older and who they become. We just don't understand the second killer who you just mentioned is technically a copycat.
He is a copycat, and technically, even though he was killed, there is another version of him at the end of the movie that's still alive and may come back someday.
Yes. Keep an eye on him just in case,
Let's see. He was actually, Jonathan Potts has been in a couple episodes of Supernatural. He's a voice actor and done a ton of TV shows.
So you know who I would have liked to see in the character of Jonathan Potts, because he reminded me of him, is the character that plays who's your favorite character from What We Do in the Shadows?
Oh, Colin Robinson.
Colin Robinson. Don't you think he'd be awesome?
He would be pretty good in that role. I don't know if I sent it to you. There is a video that this tangent, but there's a video somebody has of the actor who plays Colin Robinson, and he was once on like a local TV show.
You sent that to me, yeah.
Oh my God, he's the same exact person in real life. It's
hilarious.
Was
Colin Robinson before he was Colin Robinson, basically.
We have Lachlan Monroe making his return again this season. He's been in several episodes of this podcast this season. Playing Blake Hughes, the adult version, who is Jamie's dad. Lachlan, you will remember as being the guy with a small dick in Scary Movie. And he plays the cop in Freddy vs. Jason, the young cop that ends up getting killed. So Leanna Liberato plays Tiffany Clark, once bitten, twice dead. She was in Scream 6. She just can't seem to catch a break in all the timelines. No matter who tries to save her, she's dead meat.
Yeah.
Steffi Chin Salvo plays Marissa Song, who is the killed out of order victim. She was originally meant to die at another time, but whenever Jamie goes back to change things, she still dies, just in a different order. She was in Critters: A New Binge, which was a TV series about critters, which I didn't even know existed. So there you go. Ana Diaz plays Heather Hernandez, who got pushed up in the kill order, unfortunately for her. But, when you mess around with time, things happen. Julie Bowen plays Pam Miller Hughes, who is Jamie's mom, and she's the 2023 fresh kill by Dubasage. Is that what her Blake Hughes calls him? He calls him something douche, but I can't remember how he says it.
I forgot, yeah.
But anyways, she's obviously in Modern Family.
Mm-hmm.
She was in Hubie Halloween. I know a lot of people like Hubie Halloween. I tried watching that movie. I could not get into it.
Never even heard of it.
It's an Adam Sandler Netflix show, and he plays like a character that's like one step down the rung retarded from the Water Boy.
Okay.
I don't know. She was in Happy Gilmore though, so she was another Adam Sandler movie. Plays the hot piece that he goes after in that movie.
The one in the sprinklers?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's her.
Oh my
God. She does a voice on the DuckTales, the new series. She actually plays like the witch duck lady or whatever on that show, I believe. And then American Werewolf in Paris, she was in that. So she does have a little bit of horror background, even though she's mostly known for Modern Family.
You know what I just realized that the killer realized when we were doing round 2, aka back in 1987, and things are getting switched up where people are getting killed out of order. I think they took a little advice from the Terrifier movies where What is the thief of happiness? It was
Punctuality.
Punctuality is the thief of happiness. Yeah, I'm gonna kill, and I don't care if it's in the right order at the right time either.
Yeah, it's just whoever's convenient and whoever, because as long as they all die, that's the main point anyways.
Yeah.
Fred Henderson plays Norm Dubasage, who's the local news reporter and Chris's dad. And he was in Final Destination 2, 2 episodes of Supernatural, just like the character who plays his son.
Yeah, just like his son.
Invitation, and then Friday the 13th Part 8. So
wow.
He was in a Friday the 13th movie.
Cool.
Olivia Holt plays Pam Miller as the teen version. She's the leader of the Mollies and an uber bitch. She was in the Cruel Summer TV series, and then also in Cloak and Dagger. Charlie Gillespie plays Blake Hughes as a teen who's a stoner and a dumbass.
And they got a real hot bod that his daughter had to witness for a short period.
I think that's hilarious. The movie has so many that's what I love about it. It has so many little callbacks. Like her dad was like, she saw the shirt whenever Lachlan Monroe's wearing it. He's got like one of those muscle shirts on that's literally muscles. And she's like looking at him. She's like, Dad. And he's like, what? I was Jack back in the day, whether you believe it or not. And then she goes back in time. She's like, who is that? And she's like, oh, that's Blake Hughes. And she's like, oh my God.
I don't blame her for not knowing that was her dad because first off, he's a little darker. He's a little more olive tone and he's got dark hair. And
that is true.
Yeah, her dad is pasty. And although the character who plays her dad used to be jacked in real life, back in the day, like, he's got blonde hair. He always has. So it didn't look a lick like her dad.
I will forgive it for this because, like, I will say this. My dad was like, he would get, like, super duper dark tan, like, whenever, like, the summer would roll around. Mm-hmm. And then, like, later in life, whenever he was, got sicker or whatever, like, he was super pale. So, like, the color thing can be an issue as you age.
That's true, yeah.
So,
I'm pasty as fuck.
But the one thing that I found funny about Blake Hughes as a teenager is his accent doesn't match Lachlan Monroe's later on. He's got more of like it's I don't know, like it's not Bostonian, but it's like Philadelphia or it's something up north, and it doesn't sound like Lachlan. So.
No, it doesn't. Which I don't know if that's intentional or they just like, I don't know, because the way that we spoke as teenagers is not how we speak now either. So,
well, that's true too. I will say in his defense, though, face-wise, he's not a terrible match. For
No. It could work definitely. Facial features, yeah, but it's so funny. Like I said, it does make sense how it could be her dad, but at the same time didn't look a bit like her dad. She's like, ugh.
Well, but it also kind of mimics that, though, whenever you look back at, like, you have these people that find photos of their parents and like, oh, who's that? And it's like, oh, that was your dad back in the day. And it's like, that looks nothing like my dad, like, or that sort of thing.
I guess so. My dad looks exactly the same, except now he's got a little more gray hair. He's a little chubbier, which, come on, we all get a little chubbier as we get older. I guess same with my mom. My mom is freaking gorgeous. I hope those genes stick with me. But yeah, other than gaining a little weight, she looks the same.
I found a picture one time of my dad whenever he was like a kid, and he almost had the facial structure of Jensen Ackles. I'm
shit.
Telling you the fucking truth. And it was like, and he looked nothing like him later on. Like, it's like, okay. Well, it did. It was I could tell by his eyes, but it didn't really, it was weird to see.
All chiseled as fuck.
Yeah. Let's see. Troy Leigh Ann Johnson plays Lauren Creston, who the teen version at least, who's the inventor of the time travel.
Her name's Troy. Troy Leanne. Okay.
Yeah, Troy Leanne.
All right.
In a movie called Let's Scare Julie. Kelsey Mawema plays Amelia Creston, who is Jamie's BFF and figured out time travel. To send her back in time. Synopsis: Back to the Future if it were a slasher horror film.
Yeah.
That's all you really need.
That's it.
But further, a little bit more, Jamie Hughes uses a time machine to go back to 1987 to stop the Sweet 16 killer from going on the rampage that ultimately results in her mom's death in 2023. The 80s meet woke, Sweet 16 killers going for broke, and the times they are a changing, folks. Body count. In the original timeline, we have 4 people. In the altered timeline, we have 6. Original timeline, Tiffany Clark was stabbed 16 times by Doug Summers. Marissa Song was stabbed 16 times by Doug Summer. Heather Hernandez was stabbed 16 times by Doug Summer. You get the Sweet 16, the 16 times. There you go.
Yeah.
And then in 2023, Pam Miller Hughes is stabbed 16 times in the side and back by Chris Dubasage, who is doing this all for his podcast.
Yes. It's hard to have a podcast, guys. It's hard to get one up and running, and it's hard to get the one with the attention that it needs. Sometimes you gotta
resort to killing.
Yeah. We have no plans of doing that. We just want to state that now.
Altered timeline, Tiffany Clark, again, is the first one to die. She doesn't get out of this situation, even though she does change locations.
Yes.
Heather Hernandez is stabbed 16 times. She moves up the chain slightly. Marissa Song actually would have been saved because we don't have the original killer this time. It's not Doug Summers. But unfortunately, Marissa Song is killed by Chris Dubasage when he comes back in time. I did skip this. Doug Summers, the original Sweet 16 killer, is impaled through the back by Kara Lim with a scythe in this altered timeline. So he is actually taken out now in the altered version. Norm Dubasage is stabbed in the temple by Chris, the Sweet 16 killer, and then Chris himself is shredded into mist. He turns into red paste by the quantum drop after being shot several times by Jamie Hughes with a nail gun.
Yes. You didn't mention one thing about Tiffany, though. Tiffany would have been safe. She wouldn't have been the first to die. She might have lived if she had just given a BJ.
That is true. The BJ would have saved her life, but it did send a potential future musician into an alternate career path. He is no longer a metal musician. He now sings emo music.
Alternative rock, if you will.
I like those little changes they did with stuff like that throughout the movie. Non-counted both timelines is Trish, who was killed in a car crash after being forced to consume alcohol by Tiffany Clark, Heather Hernandez, and Marissa Song off screen, which is mentioned.
Yeah.
That is, and that moment is one of my favorite in the movie where Jamie accuses Pam of being in on that, and she looked at her and she said, "Do you really think that I'm that kind of person that I would have fucking done that to her?" That's a pretty good moment, because the whole movie she's trying to reconcile with Pam, but then she assumes the absolute worst thing about her mom, and then kind of gets clapped back for it because her mom might have been a bitch, but she wasn't evil in that sense. And that's probably the reason why she was never targeted by the original killer too. I mean, because it was her friends that were the ones that caused that. Quotes for the movie. I mean, we've got several, but these are the ones I found on here. Adult Randy Finkel. The first thing you want to do if you see the killer is run. Remember, avoid the knife, keep your life.
And that concludes the safety training that he was giving to the school assembly that day. That was it.
He was the guy that stood over top of her and belched in her face, right?
Yes.
When she went back in time. And he became the new principal after the original Sweet 16 killer was killed in the past.
Oh, yeah. Because I don't remember seeing everything like what came to be after,
Yeah, Doug Summers was the original principal in her original timeline.
Yeah.
And then he was killed, and now it was Randy Finkel who took over, so... Jamie Hughes, God, the 80s are wild.
Yeah, because she's all thinking that she's got to give security information as to why she's asking what room a student is in, or let this guy know why they're inspecting the fucking gravitron, which is not called the gravitron, but we get it. They're just like, oh, okay. Like they just willy-nilly, and that's probably how it was,
Yeah, I think it's hilarious that, she starts giving all this information. She's like, I'm from this place in Canada, and this is my name. And the woman's not even paying attention to her. She's just going ahead and get the paper out. She's like, all right, here you go.
Yeah, here's your
You're in room
schedule.
whatever. Jamie Hughes, I know it wasn't Eddie, but how do I know it wasn't Eddie? Teen Lurch. He told me all about that night, how he was making out with Tiffany, but then left as soon as she said she didn't do blowjobs. Just think, maybe if she did do blowjobs, she'd still be alive. And then Jamie responds back, yeah, let's not make that the lesson.
Dude, so I'm convinced with all her wokeness that they're making fun of wokeness.
Oh, I'm 100% convinced that. Somebody was making the argument that the movie was woke, and I told them that. I was like, if you watch the movie, her wokeness does not help her at all in the movie. In fact, everybody around her is making fun of her over it, and it actually causes her more problems in the long run because she's such a buzzkill that nobody will listen to her.
Yes.
So they're making a comment about how the woke stuff is. It's got a point. I mean, you can be a better person, you can learn from the mistakes of the past, but being preachy, and like browbeating people gets you no favors, so there's no point in it. Brody, about Back to the Future. I do want to see that movie, though. And then Sheriff Dennis Lim. Not me. I hate time travel movies. Never make any sense.
Basically, the movie making fun of itself, which was hilarious.
I don't know if I've got it in here under the comments, but what did you think of his order of people that he hates when Sheriff Dennis Lim was talking about it? It was old people. I think it was old people with dogs, and then people with kids or something like that. Maybe not in that order. And then the guy, or maybe it was handicapped people, and the guy was like, his deputy was like, that's a good list. That's a good list of people to hate,
I don't remember that, honestly.
They were sitting there as the very first thing. They were making up a list of people that are just like the worst. And I'm like, damn, you just hate anybody that's not like, Jamie Hughes, to Blake, Randy, and Cara as they arrive at Marissa's cabin. I thought it was just going to be the four of us. And then Pam Miller, what's the big deal? Did you just want to les out this weekend?
Yeah.
And then Jamie Hughes, gross. Your comment was gross, not gay people. Gay people are amazing. Your comment, it had homophobic undertones.
Oh, that was so funny.
Jamie Hughes, you shouldn't talk to your mom that way. You never know when. She just cares about you. And then Pam Miller was like, oh, so what, like you have a great relationship with your mom? And then Jamie's like, no, but I wish I did. And I wish I told her that I loved her more. I just didn't understand and then she kind of trails off because she's kind of tearing up. And then Pam's like, hey, I'm saying this as a friend, but nobody wants to hear you talk about how much you love your mom, okay? It's a good moment, though, because it's like one of the few heartfelt moments in the movie where she actually gets to address the fact that she's talking to her mom, but it's not her mom,
We get that twice in these films, so,
We do.
Yeah.
I would argue that the second film has it way better, but
it
was a good moment in this one. It was a good one. Chris Dubasage, you shouldn't have time traveled. And then Jamie's like, and you shouldn't have messed up my family. And then she shoots him a Linnell gun, and then she tells him to enjoy the ride and then kicks him to his death. That was a pretty sweet little moment.
Pink mist.
Pink mist. And then final line from Jamie, fucking time travel.
Yeah.
That sums it up. What do you think about this movie visually? I know it's an Amazon movie, but I felt like it looked like a decent movie. I mean, it didn't have like that independent look to it or anything.
Well, let's get the facts straight here. This is a Blumhouse film.
It is.
It looked like a Happy Death Day almost. Nice, clear quality to it. Great camera angles. Lots of action. The horror comedy is on point.
I would argue that, I mean, this is kind of getting a review of it a little bit, but to me, it's right up there with the other ones. I mean, I would put it above Freaky personally. I would say that my order would be Happy Death Day, probably Happy Death Day 2, and then Totally Killer, and then Freaky, and then spoiler alert for my thoughts on It's a Wonderful Knife, but I'd put it at the bottom. So.
Oh, okay. I mean, It's a Wonderful Knife. Is that Blumhouse?
I don't know that it's Blumhouse, but it's basically one of these movies.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's a horror comedy. Is. Yeah. Just from what I've seen, Happy Death Day, Totally Killer, Happy Death Day 2, and then Freaky.
I wouldn't argue with that because I hesitate to say Happy Death Day 2 now that I've seen this. They're kind of neck and neck for me.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, as far as how I like it.
Because Happy Death Day 2 is awesome. It's just this is the order of, likability, I should say.
Yeah. The story, I think they did a pretty good job. I mean, they gave you a reason why she should get. Now, the only thing that somebody might say is like her friend randomly invents a time machine. Okay. But there has to be some kind of like bullshit excuse for her to go back in the past. I mean, yeah, you just have to get over that fact. If you want to be hung up on that, then you'll probably hate the movie, honestly.
And I mean, that's you just dragging yourself down at that point, though.
Yeah, because I mean, if you just go with the concept of it and then her going back, I mean, it's a good idea. It's like, okay, can you go back and prevent this slasher from doing their thing? And she finds out that she can try, but then her interfering causes the slasher to act in a different way than it originally. So now anybody's up for grabs at that point. She almost gets Blake, her own dad, killed in the process because whenever he. In the cabin where she intervenes, Blake, I mean, puts his life on the line to save Pam at that point.
And he gets stabbed too, doesn't he?
He does.
Yeah. And he survives. But, okay, wait, real quick, jumping in on relating these movies, excuse me, to It's a Wonderful Knife. It's a Wonderful Knife has the same writer as Freaky, but it is a Shudder production, not a Blumhouse.
That's true. Yeah.
So
that's true. I'll say this about It's a Wonderful Knife. I mean, because it's tangential to this. Its concept is good. I mean, I really dig that concept. It's almost a tangent to Happy Death Day because Happy Death Day is about this repeating Groundhog Day scenario, or even Totally Killer because it's they talk about the possibility of alternate timelines where that was one of my favorite lines in this movie where they're breaking down Back to the Future and then Jamie asks her friend's mom, who's a teen at that point. She's like, so will I disappear like in Back to the Future if my parents don't get together? And she's like, no. She said, that's where Back to the Future got it wrong. She said, you'll exist, but you'll go back to a time where you never did. So it's like basically
shit.
It's set. And that's exactly what It's a Wonderful Knife is like she goes to reality where she was never born, and how do you deal with that? Because even your parents don't recognize you at that point because you never existed.
That's wild. And then it's like, who's your fucking parents?
You don't have any because the world you came from is an alternate reality that never existed. So I mean, it is. I mean, It's a Wonderful Knife is like a tangent to this.
That's kind of cool
in a way. But the only problem with that is that this one handles the horror and the comedy a lot better, and it's a lot more polished.
Yeah,
It's a Wonderful Knife is a little lackluster in both its comedy and its horror. And then whenever it gets to the end of the movie, I'm just going to say this about it: I don't understand why everybody in the movie who's a good person has to be gay in It's a Wonderful Knife. They had a little bit of that in this movie, where when she goes back to the future, Jamie was actually the name of in honor of her, actually. She should be proud of this. Her mom ended up naming her firstborn, which happened to be much earlier because her parents hooked up earlier, who was the brother, named it after her, named her Jamie, named him Jamie. But like in this reality, he's a gay guy or whatever. It's fine. He's, but in It's a Wonderful Knife, that's what I was telling you about it whenever we spoke offline about it. The main character ends up having those tendencies. That's a spoiler, but I'm just throwing it out there. Her mom, who's played by Catherine Isabel, not her mom, her aunt, who's played by Catherine Isabel, has a wife or whatever. So that's the gay relationship. Her brother's gay, and it's just like there's the whole family is. It's at one point except for her mom and dad, and I'm just like, I get representation and it's fine, but whenever it's that much, it's not representation. It's actually it's over representation.
Yeah,
and it takes me out of the movie, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean that's like, I don't know. There's a reason why certain groups are called the minority, and I think people take offense to that when you shouldn't. It's just that we're not the majority. There's nothing wrong with that, If you were the majority, then you would be the ones that would be the bashers in comparison to the ones, that are the victim, if you will. When it comes to certain topics, I should say, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not saying it's bad to have the representation. My biggest issue is just that it's so. If you look at a census for how many people claim that they are, or even if you take into consideration that there might be more people than they say they are, that's that way. When you start making the movie like 60-40,
oh yeah,
that's too much. That's too much.
Point. I don't know. I think I feel like one might argue, but I still don't feel that's a thing that, oh, well, a person like that was going to surround people like them. Maybe like-minded, but not everyone is all that. That's like a Mexican person surrounding themselves with nothing but Mexicans. Yeah, it's a thing, but not really. We're in a mixed society now where everyone kind of blends together. It's a melting pot, if you will.
Well, I could see that argument if you were talking about friends. You can pick your friends.
Oh yeah.
But this is her fucking family. Her brother.
Oh yeah.
Her aunt. She is. I mean, it's like that's
a
little
wild. Okay, so everyone in the family except for the parents, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
And if anybody wants to tune out for just a split second, this is a spoiler alert too. The heterosexual people in the movie, they're all bad people.
Bum bum
her
bum.
Her parents are bad people in the movie, in the alternate universe.
Oh my God. Okay.
And of course, Justin Long, who's the villain in the movie. I mean, that's in the previews. He's even though he talks like he might not be, he is a heterosexual. He has a very hot wife in the movie, and he's a total scumbag, and so is she. So
I didn't know he was the villain. I didn't get that from the previews.
Oh, they show a picture where she unmasked in her reality the snow angel killer, and it's him. So, and when she goes to the alternate reality, she has to convince everybody that it's him, even though they don't believe her. That's kind of the point of the movie.
Oh Lord, that's hella funny.
But yeah, when all of your heterosexual people are evil, I don't know. It's what it is. Getting back to this movie though, story wise, I liked all the little things they worked into the story. I love the comment they made in the movie where she was making fun of the MCU's like version of time travel, because I've hated Endgame's version of time travel since they talked about it. It's like they're like, Back to the Future was stupid, is what they basically lay out in that in Endgame. And they're like, if you go back in the past, you create an alternate timeline and then they go on and it's all bullshit. They talk about how you skew over and you don't affect anything that happens later. You just create like an alternate way that stuff happens. And I'm like, that makes no goddamn sense. What are you even talking about? And I love how this movie lined it out. It's like a river. It's the easiest explanation. You go up river and you drop something in it. When it goes back downstream where you came from, it's going to change things. That makes sense.
It does. And it's so funny because they do talk a lot of shit in this movie about films, or they talk shit about certain things. And I think it's fucking hilarious.
The acting, I liked everybody in this movie acting wise.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think there was a bad actor in the bunch. I mean, like there was nobody that really stood out as just being like, I mean, after the movies we've seen, I mean, I know that's not saying much. I mean, we're not getting grade A thespians here.
No.
And obviously there is a ranking. I would put Kiernan Shipka at the top of the list. She's obviously the best, one of the best in the movie outside of, the actress Julie Bowden who plays her mom. But like, still, everybody else pulls their weight. Like, there's
definitely
not a problem with it.
Even the teenagers, I was kind of worried that the teenagers would be kind of just overly 80s, like trying too hard. I didn't get that vibe from them at all. I thought it worked really smooth. I would say my favorite though was Kiernan whatever, her best friend's mom back in the 80s though, because it didn't take hardly any coercing to get her to believe that I'm from the future. She's like, yeah, I've already entertained the idea that that's a possibility.
She said, yeah, I love her excuse for that too. She's like, if you plan on inventing time travel, you have to prepare for the inevitability that somebody from the future will contact you.
Oh yeah. And it's so funny because it's like when you look at the actress, so the mom is not as polished in the future. in the original 2023 timeline.
No, she's not. But she gets better after the change.
Yes.
Like she's a and I like that about the whole thing. You could say that it's acting, but at the same time, to me, when you watch the film, clearly she had the acting chops because she acts a lot better after the change. I want to say this because she's supposed to be like very inwardly like she's an introvert. She doesn't like really emote very much because like she's had all of her dreams basically dashed in her life. She wanted to be this big like engineer, and then like it ends up working at a fucking factory because she never accomplished anything.
No, but I thought she was super, super cute, but it's so funny because, you get Kiernan that's like, wow, you look great. Because she's so ragged in 2023, and in her younger years, she's just gorgeous. She's this mixed African American mixed with some other, I don't know, Caucasian possibly. Gorgeous girl. And then again, you're right. In the future, when she comes, if you go back to the future, if you will. She's polished. Her curls are definitely more defined. Like they made her look more polished in the second round of 2023.
They did. One of my favorite callbacks to Back to the Future, since that is one of my favorite trilogies, is when Jamie keeps referring to her mom as mom when she's back in the past.
Oh, mamacita.
She keeps trying to cover it up, and then finally, after the second time she does it, she adds all this extra stuff about, oh, hot mama, mamacita, and then Pam says something like, yeah, I told you she was a les.
Yeah.
Like...
one thing that was totally I was not buying it in this film is that those girls were like, they were built like girls of 2023, meaning they were curvier, they had butts on them, where in the 80s, you had boobs or a butt. You usually didn't have both. We were built differently. I know there was a few exceptions. I'm not saying nobody had a curvy body, but it wasn't tried for. You wanted to be super, super, super skinny, and that's how those girls were back in the day, and they did not overeat like we do nowadays.
That there is something to that, yeah.
I think the Mollies, they were all built like 2023 Insta models.
They were supposed to be the hot girls of their school, though, to be fair.
Yeah.
And I do feel like if you watch like the other Rands, like the other people that's in the crowd, I feel like they did a pretty decent job of getting like people who looked average enough to have been from the 80s.
Yeah. I mean, Kiernan fit the 80s very well. Even her outfit, which is a thing now. It's more 90s now. I feel like kids are more dressing like the 90s right now. That's the style that's come back. Some early Y2K as well. Literally, they call our pants Y2K pants from back in the day. It's wild. But, like, she went back to the 80s and nobody questioned her outfit because it looked like it was from the 80s. She had her mom's jacket, so that makes sense, But, like, her body style, Kiernan Shipka, she doesn't have a curvy body. She's more of that 80s.
What you're talking
about,
yeah.
She's got that 80s flat butt vibe,
And her hair, even before she went back to the 80s, matched decent enough to where it wasn't a problem.
It just wasn't frizzy enough. She needs more Aquanet.
Yeah, well, they did make the comment that her hair wasn't big enough.
Yeah.
So there is that. I don't know. There's several things that I like in the movie as far as just like the stuff that they added in. I mean, it's it was done well enough. I mean, I've watched it twice now, and I've, like I said, I would put it up there with one that I would want to go back and rewatch, like Happy Death Day.
Yeah.
The music's not bad in the movie either.
No.
They actually have some decent, 80s type songs. Whenever she goes back in the past, the very first thing they start playing is Bananarama.
Yeah.
Like that, that fits pretty well.
I was like, that was like the song of the 80s. It's been in so many 80s movies, like The Karate Kid, or films where you're going back to the 80s, if you will.
Well, and they picked a good time in the 80s too, because like, if you go back to early 80s, the 80s hadn't defined themselves yet.
No.
So So a lot of the stuff, and we've seen this in our slasher coverage, early 80s is more late 70s.
Oh, it
really
is.
It's the same thing.
You still had disco going on.
But late 80s, they were full on, like everything you imagine that the 80s were, that 87 was that. I mean, that's whenever it hit.
It's 1987, and I haven't even tried Coke yet.
What did you think about that scene where she's talking about the difference between 80s pot and the edibles that people have now, or eatables, as you like to say? So
no, that's what Donnie G calls them, is eatables.
Okay, well, anyways.
Yeah, but still, she's explaining it, and to 2023 us, it makes sense, but to a teenager in the 80s that's high as fuck, they don't know what the fuck she's talking about. She's like, I can give you a gummy this size of this teeny tiny little morsel that, will get you higher than this. And she throws the bag at her.
Yeah.
This isn't weed. This is dirt. She's like, it's from the earth.
And speaking of and going back to what you're talking about they're making fun of her, I think they're making more fun of the woke stuff than they are the other way around.
Oh, yeah.
They do have little snipes at, stuff in the 80s. Like whenever she looks up and the name of the school went from the Red Devils, which was a devil face, to a Native American.
Yeah. She's like, and there's the racism. And it's like, oh, shut up.
Yeah. You roll your eyes at that shit. But later on, that where she's like keeps telling them about like how they shouldn't be partying or whatever because the killer's going to be there, and then that guy who becomes the new principal, the jock or whatever, kicks her outside and says, well, you can stay outside with the trees since you want to and conserve them or whatever you're going to do. And like, I mean, and basically tells her that she's this huge buzzkill. I'm like, I mean, if you're going to be one, that's what you get. I mean, that's what it amounts to.
He was only calling it like he sees it, It's so funny because she could not see the fault in her ways either. She could not come to the realization that, okay, if I try a different approach, this might get to them,
And I think there's a commentary there that's underlying. It's like they can't understand. They might have good intentions, and if they went about it a different way, they might get more people on board, but they're so full of themselves that they turn people away.
Even if you don't get everybody on board, you can open up a dialect with people. You can open up a conversation, where everybody kind of has an opportunity to say their piece or et cetera, and that's how conversations work.
And I think there's some commentary there that's being made, that people are not picking up on. Yeah, she is woke. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, and she's eye rolling, cringy, woke. But that's the point. I think that's the point they were trying to make with her. It's like if she just, like tried to connect with people instead of like accusing them all the time, then maybe she might get something started with them that way.
Definitely.
Anything else you want to say about the movie before we move on to trivia?
No, let's get into trivia because it's going to add to anything that we're going to want to talk about, I bet.
All right. Jamie mentions the movie Back to the Future several times. This movie includes several director inverted allusions to that movie. Of course, the Mamacita stuff is one of them because Marty's always like, Dad, Daddy-O, whenever he's talking to George McFly. There is the change, like when she goes, will I disappear when my parents get together or whatever. And even the fact that she fucks that up, like if she just stayed quiet, she would have been fine. But then when she's talking to Pam, she's like, oh yeah, you and Blake get together. And she's like, wait, what? She's like, I always have had a crush on him.
Oh,
and she's like, no, you get together way later. Don't do this right now. What'd she tell her at one point? She like smacks in her face. She's like, stop being horny or whatever.
Too horny, too young.
Too horny, too young. That's what she says. Yeah. Which is only going to make them get closer, because that's how teenagers are. You tell them not to, and they're going to. Jamie, the lead actress or the lead character, is named after actress Jamie Lee Curtis. So there you go.
Yeah. Is she a final girl though? She's trying to produce a different kind of final girl.
Are you talking about if Jamie's a final girl in the movie?
Yeah, is Jamie a final girl?
I would argue that Jamie's she stands up to Chris Dubasage. So I
That's
mean, she
true,
doesn't
yeah.
kill the original killer.
Yeah.
She doesn't kill the original killer. But she does kill Chris, who is actually the one who killed her mother. So technically, she does get the killer that she's going after.
Okay.
Jamie, Pam, and Blake had the last name Hughes. This is obviously a nod toward director John Hughes, who made The Breakfast Club and other assorted movies like 16 Candles, which have, yes, Molly Ringwald, you know.
Yeah.
Teen Pam and her snobby friends dress up as various characters that actress Molly Ringwald portrayed, and they call themselves the Mollys. This is a nod to that 1989 film Heathers, which is actually a very good film. The killer wears a mask depicting the face of a grinning blonde-haired man designed by makeup wizard Tony Gardner, who you'll remember is actually the guy who does Chucky now. So there is a link between them. Director Nanachka Khan explains the mask had to originate in the 80s, so you had to have that nostalgic vibe. But in our movie, people still dress up like the killer in present day, so we wanted it to feel a bit relevant. We lent on the idea of a handsome man being terrifying. Tony Gardner and our design team started pulling 80s heartthrob references like Kiefer Sutherland and Rob Lowe and Dolph Lundgren and even Johnny Bravo.
Yeah.
And then exaggerated it, made the teeth oversized. The idea was the last thing you see is the beautiful smile as you're being killed.
And that one earring, that dangling earring is so funny.
Yeah, it's totally 80s.
Yeah.
I mean, the one earring. I've heard reference to this. The mask reminds some people of Max Headroom. I don't know if you remember that show that was on in the 80s. It was like an early reference to like AI in the 80s, and the character like
it does look like him. 100%.
I think they had some of that going on, to be honest.
That is scary. That's creepy.
When the trailer was released, it drew comparisons and criticism for having a near identical plot to the 2015 film The Final Girls.
Yeah, it does.
A film also about a teenage daughter going back in time to having to save their mother. The director of that film, Todd Strauss-Schulson, commented on social media, "Haven't I made this movie before?" They are a bit different plot, but they do share similarities. Folks, that is one reason why this is a double feature.
Yes.
with The Final Girls, because yes, they do have a lot of similarities.
I mean, one could argue that the daughter in The Final Girls doesn't necessarily go back into the future. She just goes into a film, but I guess it is supposed to be Back to the Future because she's trying to bring back. Okay, we'll get to that later.
Yeah. The creepy maintenance man Damon that Jamie bumps into at Billy's Boardwalk is seen as a youth also working at the amusement park before being creepy when Jamie arrives in 1987. Molly Ringwald is alluded to several times in the film. The movie's high school, Vernon High School, is probably a nod to Richard Vernon, the teacher who kept them all in detention in the Breakfast Club. The first time DNA was used to solve a crime was in 1987 in England. So those cops saying that DNA was stupid kind of had a point, because in Podunk, wherever, they weren't going to have access to it.
Well, I knew that they didn't know what it was, obviously, when they were making fun of it. And it did get me to thinking, well, wait, when did they start using DNA? I know they started trying like in the 70s, but nothing like what we have today.
No. And probably the biggest high profile, the very first high profile, trial that ever tried to use it, to my knowledge, was the OJ trial, because they kept trying to see if they could find the DNA that matched up or whatever to see if it was him. And of course, it somehow wasn't, or whatever. that whole trial was a sham, but we'll not go into that. We don't have time for it. Let's see. Jamie uses the surname LaFleur when she goes back in time. This is the female equivalent to Jim LaFleur, which is the pseudonym Sawyer uses in the TV show Lost when he goes back in time and lives among the Dharma Initiative. So a little bit more time travel.
Good Lord.
Name usage. In present day, when Mr. Hughes and Sheriff Carol Lim are at Billy's Boardwalk searching for the missing Jamie, Amelia reveals, "She used my time machine." Sheriff Lim cuts her off and states that she will solve this case. And in fact, in 1987, she was the one to strike the killing blow against the original Sweet 16 killer, making it possible to reveal his identity and solve the mystery of it. So Sheriff Lim did solve the crime, even if it was the past version of herself that did it. At the beginning, when I love that one line too. Whenever Jamie goes up to the old Sheriff Lim, like the male, and she says to him, she's like, "You're the sheriff's dad or whatever," and then the deputy looks at him. It's like, they call your daughter the sheriff. Awesome, you know.
Oh yeah.
At the beginning, when the podcast tour group gets samples from the Zataburger employee, Chris Dubasage says, "Let's give it up for Angie, who wishes there were more people killed." Angie said there should have been at least 6 people for a serial killer. After the timeline has changed, there were exactly 6 people
Yes.
dead.
Oh my God, I did not catch that, but that was so funny because he totally put her on like blast. And she's like, I don't wish.
There is some good writing in that script because, I mean, like I said, it does link enough to itself to cover a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
Death Holler Awards. What do we think about Jamie / Colette Hughes? Since her name, for the folks who don't know, when she goes back to the future, since she was the second born child and her brother was named in honor of the original Jamie that helped the Pam and her boy toy get together, now Jamie's name is Colette, so that's the reason she's got dual names.
So she has to get used to being called Colette. You know how many times they probably called for her brother and she's like, huh?
That would have to be fucked up.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a tangent to all this, but in Back to the Future, there was always the theory that when Marty came back to the future and he had changed everything, that there should have been another Marty there, because the Marty that went back to the past came from a different scenario. His parents, didn't get along. Biff was like the bully, and now that the family, actually, improved everything and they were getting along, the Marty that would have existed in that, 1985 would have been a completely different person. And the dark theory is that he actually went with Jennifer, or was going to go Jennifer camping like they originally said they were going to do, and he died, when he went camping, and it just so happened that Marty showed up, took his place, and nobody knew the difference.
Oh my God.
That's the dark theory behind that.
Damn. I wanted to say something about Jamie / Colette, is that she finds out about being, she finds out about her name being Colette because, who is it? It's Lauren? Is that the name of the mom? Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Lauren, she, back in time, she knew, there's a time travel machine, so I better fucking give her a pamphlet of things that have changed. So hopefully when I see her, I can give her this book of the things that have changed. Now, I don't know how that works in the timeline of things, because how does she know she's going to see her on the day that she shows up and that things are going to line up? But regardless, she was able to get a cheat code, if you will, of all the things that have changed, and we get to see that at the very end. That explains a lot of things about, what happened from the changes because of what she did.
Well, she explains it, and that was good too. They said that the reason she wasn't there when she first got out of the time machine was because she didn't account for daylight savings time or something like that.
Well,
so,
they did mention that, yes. I was thinking, how do they know the day? But I guess she wrote the date down. She put the date in the time machine, so that would make sense that she would know, okay, on this day, I'm going to have to give her this book,
They do make a brief mention, by the way, in that the alternate Chris Dubasage, who is still alive, the one who saw his father killed by some random person, and actually his future self, was so troubled by what he saw that he went and he became a monk at some kind of monastery, like in Asia or something, and they are still keeping check on him to make sure that he doesn't become the Chris.
Yeah.
That he originally was, which is kind of a setup for a possible sequel if they ever want to go that route.
Yeah.
But, so I think Jamie's fine. I mean, she's not the kind of final girl that like Sienna would have been, like we discussed, with Terrifier. She doesn't kick ass or anything till the very end. In fact, she messes up quite a bit, because every time she tells them And we've already discussed why, because for wokeness, she pushes people away and they don't want to trust her. But every time that she tells somebody that somebody's going to be killed and tries to prevent it, she actually pushes them into getting killed.
Yeah.
As a result.
She tried though. She was tricked because she had an idea in her head what was gonna happen. It was so like, and it's funny how in the future things were changing too. Like I should say 2023 present time, things were changing because news articles were changing. Before Dubasage's fucking very eyes, he's like, okay, I know that it said this before, and and then what did they bring up? The Mandela effect.
And I love that too, because it perfectly explains how somebody would feel. I mean, when something they've known is like a core part of their being suddenly changes out of nowhere, it was a good explanation for that. I thought.
I thought so too. Writing. Yeah.
What do we think about Doug as the original Sweet 16 killer? He wasn't very prolific, but I guess he got the job done on the people who done his girlfriend wrong. Fat
Trish. Fat
Trish. That's what her name was. I'm just saying.
I know. No. I know. I thought it was hilarious, but and I bet you too, she wasn't even that fat. I bet you she was just
she probably wasn't. No,
Thickums McGee, and for back in the 80s, that was morbidly obese. So she's probably like me, a size 5. That people look and they're like, whoa, that's a little thick, and it's like, no, it's not. I'll show you thick. It's not on me, but people in the double digits. But regardless, Fat Trish. I didn't get it at first, and I kind of had actually forgotten why did Doug become the killer, but that makes sense. His girlfriend she was drinking, and they kind of bullied her into driving home. I wasn't quite getting that part of the story.
They bullied her into drinking because they kept making fun of her over different things. Then once she was drunk, they kept bullying her even further, and she's like, I'm not going to take this anymore. I'm going to drive home. And they let her, and then she ended up dying. And in the middle, and this is how Doug knew about it, in the middle of her, breaking down and getting that drunk, she messaged him and told him what was happening to her.
Wait, how'd she message him?
I can't remember how they said that she got a hold of. Maybe she called him.
She must have called him because texting wasn't quite there yet.
Yeah, so but they said that she contacted him and told him about what was happening. And before he could get there to drive her, he was on his way. I think he was on his way there to pick her up.
Oh, yeah.
Because he knew that she'd already started out and then got an accident. Which is it's pretty dark. I mean, it's a pretty dark reveal in the movie. I mean, given, how goofy the characters are up until that point, it's like, and that's why Pam is so, it offends her so much that, Jamie claims that she would do something that dastardly herself. You know, she's like, they did that. Why would you think I'm that evil? Like, I mean, I would, make fun of her, but like, I wouldn't do that to her.
Yeah.
I feel like Doug stopped. Like, he got rid of the 3 that actually caused it, and he didn't go after Pam. So, I mean, it's Chris as a fame whore, and in his dad's perpetual shadow that ends up being the one that actually got Pam and started all this.
And Pam put up a fucking fight because she specifically said, and I was like, that would fucking suck. She's lived 35 years of worrying if the killer was ever going to back. She's like, you think I'm going to fucking not be prepared? She had guns in so many hidden sections of her home. She fucking knew self-defense. She kicked ass.
Yeah, she did. And I like that too, because it goes back to what we were talking about with Jamie Lee Curtis's character, Laurie Strode. There's obviously multiple versions of her.
Yeah.
I hate the H2O version of her that just accepted that Michael was still out there somewhere.
Yeah.
Or possibly could be. And I'm just going to live my life, No, the one that's in the 2018 where she's like this PTSD, survivalist, type, that makes just like kind of, Pam didn't go that extreme, but Pam was ready. She had guns everywhere. She was waiting for the moment that somebody would try to, come back and finish the deed. And so that's where she was at with it.
Yeah, I think it worked out really good. And I thought Julie Bowen did an amazing job in those scenes where she had to fucking fight.
She did. She did really well. What'd you think about whenever they came back to the future? And first of all, this movie's set on Halloween, so technically it can be a Halloween movie every year. Just throwing that out there for people. But what did you think about whenever Jamie came back and then her parents were dressed up? I'm trying to remember what Blake was dressed up as, because Julie was dressed up like Jamie was from the past. She was actually dressed as Jamie, which was kind of a nice little nod to Jamie, or Colette now, to say, you inspired me. I'm dressed like you, but I can't remember what Blake was dressed up like.
I don't remember. You're not getting anything from me. I wasn't paying attention. I was all over the place.
He wasn't muscle shirt anymore. He had. I want to say he was just like this general like 80s like hairband type outfit or something.
Yeah.
Because they were talking about how their favorite band was like some kind of like hair metal band or something. They were going to go see them. I did like the little comment that she made though, that Grandma would be there to.
Oh yeah.
Like she was every year, because she finally patched things up with her own mom. Pam did.
Yeah.
So.
Grandma can't wait to see you at Thanksgiving.
I did like that where where Jamie told Pam, she's like, with that whole scene, we kind of mentioned it, but don't talk to your mother like that, because you don't know when she might not be here.
Yeah.
Best kill for me was Chris exploding into the pink mist, because that fucker deserved it. Of all the fucking people in the movie, I felt bad for Doug, and Doug wasn't a total asshole. Like, he was nice to Jamie. He was just regularly talking to her.
Well, she was like him. She's fucking being bullied,
Yeah. But Chris, he's just a psychopath. Like, he deserved everything that came to him.
Definitely. And what other kills do we have to compare to? Oh, and she was stabbed 16 times. And she was stabbed 16 times. Oh, by the way, this one was stabbed 16 times.
Well, Doug getting killed with a scythe was pretty cool.
That was, yeah. It went through him nice and smooth.
Because young Sheriff Lim, the teenage version, she was dressed like Death, and then she had a scythe. That's pretty cool.
They're like, whoa, that thing's real? She's like, yeah, my dad gave it to me. There's a killer on the loose.
Yeah, I love that line. Best scream, probably Teen Pam when she comes in on Tiffany, the very first kill. She's the only one I really remember screaming, because the rest of them, they kind of scream toward the end whenever they got the rape button or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
That was hilarious too. They're like, what is this thing? And it's like, and then they tell her, they're like, go in there and give like you're going to go give somebody a blowjob, because that's what you do.
Yeah, you do it all the time. Oh my God. And then she's walking through and she's like, hi, I'm here. I'm ready to give you a blowjob. And then she's terrified. She's been in this house of horrors. I forget what it's called. She's been in it so many times, and she specifically said, I feel like if you go into the house of horrors and you see something you don't want to see, that's on you, because she's constantly giving guys blowjobs in there. She's walking through. For the first time, she's seeing what's going on in there, which, by the way, the people hidden in different sections of it, I thought that was genius.
Yeah, that was really good.
Yeah.
They were all hidden in different spots in the house.
Yeah, so she's walking through. She passes by this girl hung upside down, which if you listen to our most recent episode of The Terrifier, it looks like the girl in her black panties waiting to get sawed right down the veg. And she's like, oh, I have those panties.
Yeah, I remember her saying that line. She's like, oh, I have those.
Yeah, it's like, ugh. Gross. Which, by the way, we're gonna take it back to the Terrifier real quick. How did Art get the panties off of her? He literally just pulls them, like, those jokes you see where people pull their underwear right off, but they're still intact. Yeah. It looks like they're wearing them. How did he get the underwear off of her? She was up in chains.
He's an expert mime. He's probably got he's probably like a street magician too. Whatever he does in his other time. Like, I would like to know how Art got to the point that he was at. If they ever want to make a prequel where it leads into how the original Terrifier, how did Art get to that point? Like, he had to have been a street performing mime that was like either a psychopath or they pushed him into being one.
Yeah, because they made so much fun of him. That was a side tangent, but yes, we just got done discussing the Terrifier, and here we are seeing another woman not woman, but dummy hanging upside down in the same underwear, I will argue, as the girl in the Terrifier. Not Tara. Dawn, yes. And
I was getting ready to say, how can you don't know that Dawn was a dummy? She might have been highly intelligent.
I wasn't talking about Dawn. She was blonde, so I doubt it.
No, she was one of those, the way they portrayed her in the Terrifier. This is a tangent going back to that, but they portrayed her as one of those like social media idiots that like, no matter how dangerous something looks, I got to get a selfie.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, well, you're going to be dead, so go ahead and do that.
Anyways, back to the BJs in the House of Horrors.
But the Scythe, her dressed up as Death. It was a cool little thing that they did there. I like that.
She was also supposed to be like they had you thinking for a minute that she could be the killer.
Yeah, they did that. And that's something else that the script was really good at. I got to give them credit for. There was this beef between Blake and Sheriff Lim in the 2023, and you never could figure out why, because they never would say.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you go back in the past, there's that scene where he tells her, he's like, you're probably the fucking killer. And she's like, I'm not the killer, and I'm going to prove that I'm not the killer. So that's the reason in 2023 that she always hated Jamie's dad, was because he blamed her back whenever the first kills went on.
I wonder if she doesn't blame him in the future, though, because she did solve it. So I thought she was nicer in the future, in the second future, if you will, or this second 2023.
Well, I think she'd had time to get over it at that point. Like she had that chip on her shoulder, you know, in the past, or, you know, in the other version, because she had never solved it and everybody made fun of her over it, basically. So
yeah, and you know what? There was unanswered questions, because she immediately asked, well, where was your dad? You know, at the time, well, he was driving her to a fucking concert.
Yeah.
Like, alibi right there. Well,
exactly. Yeah, it's like, where was he at? You know,
driving us to the concert.
I like that line though, when she went up to the young teen version of Sheriff Lim, and she's like, you know what? When you get older, you're going to have like a face that expands out and looks kind of like a pear or whatever she says, and your hair, you're going to have really bad hair, and like she goes on and on.
Yeah.
And the girl's just like all hurt. She's like, that was really specific.
Yeah. Oddly specific. Yeah, that was a very Latina move of her, because like, if a Latina can't stab you, they're going to make it hurt like they stabbed you, because they're going to tell you some truth that is going to get you.
Well, the funny thing is that she never took that to heart. Like, I mean, I know she can't control like how her face, like over time, changes. But you would have thought that the future version of her would have been more feminine looking, or, you know, but nope, she's still the big manly looking woman she was.
Well, she was very broody, and it's funny because they didn't imply, and they absolutely could have, they didn't imply that she was a lesbian or that, you know, she's gay or anything like that.
No, that's the one thing I'll give this movie. The only thing that they introduce like in any of that way is just the brother being gay, and that's fine, because I mean,
it was very quick. It was just addressed, it was touched on, and then it was, you know, break the wrist, walk away, you know?
Yeah. And he was one member of the family that happens, you know, there's nothing out of the way for that. I'm just arguing, and It's a Wonderful Knife, if the entire family outside of two people, then you got some overrepresentation. Just
it was smooth. It's crazy that they didn't address her like that, though, because they easily could have been like, well, she was miserable because she had not come out, you know, but then if she does come out, she's happier. You know, no, they just kind of kept it as is, and I really feel like they could have successfully introduced her as gay or lesbian, you know?
That's the reason I don't feel like this movie is woke like people try to make it out to be, because it doesn't push that stuff. It just has a woke character that is actually made fun of by everybody else in the movie. You know? Best boobs not applicable for either of the films we're discussing, because they don't really show anything in either one of these.
Not really. Yeah.
Best side character, to me, it's Sheriff Lim from the 1980s. I just love how he doesn't give two fucks. When she hands him the bloody, you know, paper, she's like, what is this? And then she says DNA, and he's like, DMA?
Yes.
And he just throws it in the floor. He's like, all right, here's what we're really doing.
Yeah.
You know? And I'm like,
no, he was funny. Yeah. I can't think of any, because I feel like even Teen Lauren and and older Lauren, I think that maybe not older Lauren so much, but they kind of turn into main characters unintentionally, especially teen Lauren.
Yeah.
And the friend just wasn't, she was supportive in her role, but, I don't know, not as much as her mom was,
Yeah, her mom was actually the better version of her, I thought.
Yeah.
I mean, because, she had more of a personality. Like the one from 2023 who was actually Jamie's friend, you didn't get much from her. I mean, really. I mean, she's into the science and all that stuff like her mom, but other than that, there's nothing really that stood out about her.
She was basically just kind of trying to figure out the machine that her mom had already built.
Yeah.
So,
she was just latching onto that,
and they stumble across the solution by accident, which I understand that has created some amazing things in the past. I do like how in 1987, when the first murder happens, even though it doesn't happen the same way, Jamie leaves a note that says "stab the machine," and it was like a clue.
The machine, with a J. And I love that where Chris Dubasage says, "We always thought the J was some kind of satanic symbol," and I'm like, it's a fucking J.
Yeah. And he says, "Are you sure that's not a satanic symbol?" She's like, "I'm sure." But basically she's like, "Oh, we need a metal conductor." How the fuck did you get that from stab the machine? Like, I get the stab the machine, but like, oh, she's telling me I need a metal conductor,
Yeah, she walks it through, but yeah, it's a little out there because she's like, stab the machine, stab the knife. Oh, we need more metal. Metal conductor. That's how she kind of walks it through. I want to say that the name of the band that the guy, because I love how they changed that. It's like Beside a Waterbed or something. Like that. Was
that's so fucking stupid. And for reference, Beside the Waterbed was where he almost got a BJ from what's her name. She didn't want to do it, though, because pee comes out of those
Tiffany.
things. Yeah,
Tiffany.
I don't do BJs. Pee comes out of those.
Gross, yeah.
It is. That's how it is.
Franklin Ward is Jamie, the final girl, because we've already said she's woke as fuck. She's annoying as fuck.
Yes.
I mean, she's likable in her. I love whenever she's trying to connect with Pam and the emotional moments she has. It's actually really good. And I do like Kieran and Shipka, but still the character is annoying.
Yes.
She really is.
Which brings us to the annoying Doom Prophet.
Which is Jamie, because she's the only one who knows that there is a killer and that there's going to be deaths, and she's annoying a different way, because even though she's not like screeching at them like the way that Crazy Ralph or the Crazy Cat Lady would have been, she's browbeating them like a Southern Baptist preacher. It's like, if y'all don't do this, you're going to go to hell. It's like,
you're going to die and go to hell. Yeah.
Dumbest moment, the teens completely ignoring Jamie and going to the cabin in the woods after being told that the killer would strike again. Because Pam, there's a scene, and I love it because of just how stupid it shows that they can be as teenagers. She's talking to her, and she's like, wait, Jamie said that the killer would be here this weekend. And it's like, she told you that like 5 times when you got here. Like, why are you just now like waking up to this? You remember, what the line that I'm talking about? It's like whenever they hear the scream inside the cabin, and she is just like, her and Blake have had their moment, and she's cut herself.
Yeah.
And then she looks at Blake. She's like, wait, Jamie said that the killer's supposed to be here this weekend. And she's like, all freaked out. And I'm like, that's why she was trying to keep you from coming here. Like, what the fuck?
And it's funny because I think who it was, the Asian girl, she's like, we're going to go to my parents' condo. That was considered a condo back in the day. That is what a condo was. And a condo is now an apartment.
Yeah.
So yes, it was a cabin in the woods, 100%. But back in the day, the style of this quotation mark cabin is the style of what a condo used to be back in the day. So it was a great misinterpretation of, we're going to go to a condo. A condo is clearly in the city, which I did hear them imply that it was going to be in the city. Did you not catch that?
They did imply that to get her to shut up. Yeah.
Okay, so they said that on purpose, but still, it was still a condo, and fucking dying that it was like the exact cabin where she died.
One thing I just thought of that I really like is the tie back between future Pam and past Pam that Jamie uses to get into Pam's life. She knows that Pam believes in psychics because she's got that line where she says, "Yeah, I've got all this stuff to protect myself." She's got mace. I've got this gem that a psychic gave my mom to protect me.
Yeah.
And so when she goes back in the past, she's talking to young Pam, and after the party, after Tiffany's been killed, she's like, "How do you know that she was supposed to be killed?" She's like, "Because I'm a psychic."
Yeah.
Because she knows that Pam believes in psychics, and then she hands her that gem, and she's like, "This is what I use to focus my." And I'm like, that's perfect because she knows her mom believes in this shit.
Yeah.
So he's using it to slide in there and get her to believe her. So that's pretty good writing, and I thought, in that sense.
I like how she's like, "This looks legit."
Yeah, when she says that line, she's like, "This looks legit." I like this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Before we finish this up, we've already said our rankings, and we both liked Happy Death Day. So for it to be up there, I mean, that's it. But it's nice whenever there's really good movies coming out in the genre, and this is one of them, I think. So
yeah, and Amazon kind of needs to work on pumping them out in order to keep people with their Amazon subscriptions. You get it free when you have Amazon Prime. Amazon Prime, we do not have sponsors, so if you're looking to sponsor a podcast,
that's probably better than Shudder, to be honest, even though I would appreciate both. But with Amazon Prime, I do more shopping, so
yeah,
if they want to support us, that would be great. I bet you
they don't sponsor a damn person.
They don't sponsor.
Yeah,
anybody.
I don't ever hear commercials like Amazon Prime. Actually, no, I take that back, because there are a few podcasts I hear where if you post your if you subscribe to Amazon podcast, not podcast, but like Amazon Music, you can hear the podcast first on that, like a day earlier. And so I guarantee you Amazon is sponsoring those people. Probably pennies to the dollar, but, still sponsoring. And we're getting negative pennies to the dollar, so we would happily take pennies to the dollar at this point. Shudder, I would love to be sponsored by Shudder, though, only because of who they are, what they have, but Peacock is really coming up with the horror, too.
Well, that's because they're owned by Universal, and Universal is the studio that's most known for its horror movies.
Oh,
really
definitely.
Is.
So, the thing is that it's not a competition, guys. If you all want to sponsor us, we're here for it.
And if we have to have exclusivity clauses, that's fine.
Oh, I guess.
Just one of you, just please step up and make this
highest bidder. You can have us. We're cheap too.
I don't have anything else to say about the movie. It has enough heart to it. It sells the Kiernan missing her mom. It's got the comedy to it. It's got the blood. It's not scary, so I guess you could maybe fault it for that, but I don't have to have that in a horror comedy necessarily, because I don't get scared anyway, so for the most part. Yeah. No, it was really good. It's funny because I watched this for the first time literally the other day. So I waited to the very end before we recorded to catch this one. And it's funny because so many people were like, "Hey, you need to watch Totally Killer. You need to watch Totally Killer." Well, I know you're listening to this podcast, and I watched it, guys. There you go. All right, folks. Join us next time for the Final Girls and the wrap up to Slasher Pass season. With that, peace be with you. And with your spirit. Floats like a swan, grace on the water, lips like sugar, just when you think you've caught her, she glides across the water, she calls for you tonight to share this moonlight.